Mic check, 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
morning, everyone. Friends and family and graduates, welcome to the 2023 Baylor University School of Law Summer Commencement Ceremony. What a wonderful day this is. This is a time for memory and celebration for what these graduates have accomplished and what they will accomplish in the future. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. To open our ceremony, I call on Mr. Michael Brunger, a member of the graduating class, to ask a blessing on our time together. Mike.
Good morning. Fellow graduates, family, friends, faculty, and honored guests. As we gather today to celebrate the culmination of years of hard work, dedication, and the fact that we all survived practice court, let us take a few moments to reflect on the significant milestone in the lives of these remarkable individuals. Please pray with me. Dear Lord, help us invoke a spirit of gratitude for the opportunities afforded to us. Never let us forget that we didn't have to do this. Instead, we got to do this. We are grateful for the wisdom imparted by our esteemed professors and for the support of our parents, grandparents, spouses, and children who have been our unwavering pillars of strength as they have put up with us while patiently waiting for this day to come. We could not have done this without them. May we appreciate the challenges we have faced, the long hours of study, the sleepless nights, and the countless sacrifices made in the pursuit of justice and truth. We recognize the commitment and resilience it takes to navigate the complexities of the law and embrace the responsibilities that lie ahead. Lord, let us invoke a spirit of hope. We pray that you continue to guide us while we embark on new chapters, armed with the knowledge and skills acquired during our time here at Baylor Law. And as we carry the torch of justice, we pray you bring us opportunities to be an advocate for those who need a voice and strive to make a positive impact in the world we inhabit. Finally, as we stand on the precipice of our legal careers, let us invoke a spirit of integrity, compassion, and ethical responsibility. May we approach the practice of law with unfaltering dedication to justice, upholding the principles that form the foundation of our profession. In this spirit, Lord, we ask that you lay your blessings upon each graduate, knowing that they have the power to make a profound difference in the lives of others through their legal expertise and heartfelt dedication. Congratulations, fellow graduates, on this remarkable achievement. May our journey be filled with continued growth, fulfillment, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Amen.
Please be seated. Mike, thank you for those words. As Mike acknowledged, the graduates have all gotten here because their families. Mike in particular was selected by his classmates to give the invocation, so what an honor that is. And Mike noted the importance of family and friends. As I look out, I see the joy on your faces because you all know it's been a long journey for your graduates. And they know that it is a journey that you have supported them through, starting probably many years ago when they might have first dreamed of going to law school. You, family and friends, are the people that heard them as they talked about their first year and being randomly called on, as they survived, as has already been noted, practice court. So graduates, you know that you have arrived to this moment after lots and lots of hard work, but that you didn't do it on your own. I know how much you appreciate your families because as I look at the insert with these sentiments of the graduating class, virtually every one of you thanked your family. But I'm going to ask now that you show them with a round of applause how much you appreciate them. So if you would stand, turn and face your family and friends and give them your gratitude. Thank you all for supporting your graduates. Now, I hope you will indulge me just a little bit. I'm going to talk just very briefly about our program. Many years ago, one of my colleagues coined the phrase, Baylor Law, where fun goes to die. That appeared on T-shirts, and for years has been repeated, often tongue-in-cheek, but to be honest, I rather resent that phrase because I think we have a lot of fun at Baylor Law. But to the extent that it reflects the rigor involved in our program, I'll say we take great pride in how we train our students to become competent and ethical lawyers who understand that ours is a profession of service. All my colleagues and I believe we owe an obligation not only to our students, but those whom they will serve in their professional and their non-professional lives. Those people who will seek our students out because our students have special knowledge and skills, and the clients are often facing some of the most challenging events in their lives. Service is critical to our mission. We are a faith-based law school, and we take our faith mission seriously. Dean Tobin emphasized to our graduates during their new student orientation, even before they had spent a minute in a law school class, the importance of serving God and serving God's kingdom. He noted the wonderful gift that we have been given to have the aptitude, skills, knowledge, and opportunity to act for others who cannot do it for themselves. Being a lawyer is a privilege that not everyone enjoys. We have an obligation to do good service. I want to quote Marian Wright Edelman, founder of the Children's Defense Fund, who said, "Service is the rent we pay for being. It is the very purpose of life and not something you do in your spare time." Our commitment to service is borne out in our clinics and our pro bono program. At Baylor Law, we don't compel service. We don't have a service requirement. Rather, most of our students will, at some point or another during their time at the law school, participate in one of our clinics or engage in one of our various pro bono opportunities. My colleagues and I are proud that in the past 15 or 16 years, our programs have earned more than 14 awards from the American Bar Association, the State Bar of Texas, and Texas Access to Justice. Service is important, and our students heed the call. I want to turn our attention to another group that heeded the call to service, and that's our men and women in the military. For years, an important part of our commencement service is to recognize those individuals. We recognize that we would not be able to do the things that we do as guardians of the law without the protection and the security provided by our armed forces for our national security and the protection of our rights. Too often we fail to note the symbiosis that exists between the services of our men and women in uniform and the work we do as lawyers. At this time, I ask all who served in any branch of the military, whether you are active, reserve, or retired, to stand so that we may thank you. We appreciate your service and your willingness to give all to your country. Allow me, if you will, to introduce my colleagues who are on the stage. I'll introduce our graduation speaker, Professor Paul Yanowich, later, but let me give brief introductions of my other colleagues that are on the stage. Their more complete bios are in the program. First of all, Associate Dean Matt Corden. Dean Corden is currently serving as our interim associate dean, and I'm grateful that he graciously agreed to step into this position during our time of transition. As if it wasn't enough, he continues to serve as the director of legal writing and as a professor of law. Matt has developed a reputation for being the go-to man. When anyone at the university wants to get something done efficiently and well, Matt is sure to be considered as the person to get it done. One fact about Matt that is in his bio, but that I just particularly want to point out, Matt has earned a black belt in not one, but two different disciplines of martial arts. So I'm just saying, He is not one to be trifled with. Let me introduce the hooders. Hooding is an important part of our ceremony. As many of you know, one of the highlights of earning a higher degree is the recognition that one receives when he or she receives their hood. The hood celebrates a student's success in completing their degree. Having earned the Juris Doctorate degree, our graduates would get the long hoods to show their accomplishment. Our tradition at Baylor is that the graduating class chooses who they would like to have hood them, and they have chosen well. They have chosen Professor Jessica Asbridge. She is one of our newer additions to the faculty, having joined us in the fall of 2020. Her academic credentials are stellar, having graduated from the University of Kansas with distinction and with honors, and earning her Juris Doctor degree from Indiana University, graduating summa cum laude. Professor Asbridge teaches our first-year property course as well as upper quarter courses. She's already begun to develop a national reputation as a scholar, writing on the topic of eminent domain and related topics. Just as importantly, Professor Asbridge is well regarded by her students. First year can be quite challenging for many students, and her students view her as someone who has high expectations of them, but who is also accessible. They have honored Professor Asbridge by selecting her to hood them once they receive their degrees, because they know how deeply she cares about them. My colleague, Catherine Sims. Catherine Sims is similarly someone who cares deeply about our students, and it is no surprise that the students would select her as one of the individuals to hood them. Catherine is the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. As such, many of our students get to know Catherine even before they matriculate, as she meets with many of our prospective applicants who visit the law school or have questions about our program, the admissions process, or financial aid. Director Sims's involvement continues through the new student orientation and beyond. Director Sims is passionate about student health and wellness, and our students know this. Working with other colleagues, she reminds our students about the importance of balancing hard work and good habits like exercising regularly or just taking a short walk during a break. Catherine is the one who can be counted on to greet them with coffee and other things, and sometimes she might be accompanied by her dog, Bruiser, who I understand made an appearance at the bar exam earlier this week, as something to just give the students a chance to relax and pet Bruiser. Catherine is also primarily responsible for organizing our dog park social, where our students can bring their pets and socialize with other students. The dogs get to have a fun outing, and ultimately, once again, it's one of those things that reminds us that, yes, we actually do have fun at the law school. So Catherine and Jessica, thank you both for being here, and graduates, you really did pick well. Of course, those of us on the stage are only a small fraction of our faculty and staff colleagues who love the law school and are deeply committed to the mission that we have. And they're committed to the experience that our students have while they are at law school. Some of our colleagues couldn't be here today because they are, in fact, in Scotland, participating in our Academy of the Advocate, in which many of our students, as well as students from many other schools, are there to learn how to be better advocates. They apologize for not being here, but they have graduated the people that are here this morning and shared with them how proud they are. We do have faculty and staff who are here, however, a good number of them, and I'm going to ask them to stand so that we may recognize you. We have some folks who opted not to stand, our very diligent group of student workers who also very much make the law school operate. I'm now honored to turn the program over to our highest ranking student, Gardner Bain McNeil, to offer his remarks. Congratulations, Bain. Baylor is known as one of the most competitive law schools, so it's no small feat to be recognized as the highest ranking student. Congratulations, the podium is yours.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered whether your boss, your client, your spouse, or maybe even your law school professor is going to drill you on details about something you're supposed to know, but you don't? Well, for the past 2.5 years, all of us have come to accept our daily dose of that. One could say that for our class, our time here at Baylor, it was a tad atypical. When we started, we were reporting to sterilized tents and swishing cotton swabs in our nose twice a week. We also saw fist bumps take the lead over handshakes. And before we could get our feet under us, our classes were canceled by a 100-year ice storm that just so happened to happen the next year. But we're done now, and today we're walking. I'd say that's pretty good for where Professor Counselor ranked us in the early days. As I was preparing what to say and sort of wishing I had bombed just one more test, I thought about some big ticket items that we should all be very grateful for because they aren't a certainty for all law school students. First, to friends and family, we are so glad that you are here to celebrate with us today. Thank you for your support, generosity, understanding, and the prayers you raised over the past few years. I think it's fair to say that being a little self-absorbed, especially these last few months, is par for the course. On behalf of all the graduates today, thank you. Second, to Baylor Law. You now have a new class of Baylor lawyers, for better or worse. To the professors, many of you having influenced or written our current laws, argued cases in front of the high courts, or are bona fide experts in your field, we're grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from you. And to the faculty and staff, this prestigious school does not run without you. Lastly, to my friends and colleagues, it is a blessing to have come here at the same time as each of you. I've been through the type of fraternity pledgeships that catch headlines and can say that while we've been in the trenches together, we've built the same type of bonds. I'm honored to call you friends and can't wait to see what trails we blaze. I've been amazed by the fortitude of everyone in our class, especially those of you who are naturals at trial and litigation, something I'm wholly unfamiliar with. Those who have their own families and kids to look after, in addition to law school. And those of you who unfortunately experienced a deep loss during our time here and carried on nonetheless. I want to share what I thought was the biggest lesson I learned here, and it's probably a common lesson for all of us. It has nothing to do with the law. Thankfully, I did not know what the practice court program was until it was too late to transfer all my credits. I don't think I was alone. As a background, as a frame of reference for what I'm about to say, I worked for 5 or 6 years before coming back to law school. I worked an 80-hour-a-week job in the concrete industry, and I helped my brother start a construction company from the ground up. Those weren't easy, nor were the jobs that you may have had prior to starting. But it was my experience that when the task list was piling up, you could prioritize, delay, or delegate. Practice court, however, was the first time where everything was important, the deadlines could not be changed, and you had to do it. There was just not enough time to do everything at a level like we would have liked to. Law school isn't easy, but in practice court, we were already reading thousands of pages of case material, often had afternoon lectures or other classes, and then our big trial data rooms went live, adding another 4,000 pages or so of discovery material. After that, another case drops, and we need to prepare, file, and argue a summary judgment motion on. And to cap it off, as spring starters, when we logged in to start our bar prep courses, we realized we needed divine intervention to add another 6 hours to each day. I'm not sure what the right label is, but the gist of this lesson is, when you're fighting on multiple fronts and you can't supply them all like you'd want to, you have to adapt. And we did adapt. And I'm proud of us for that. You should be proud. The reason I think this is a valuable lesson is because we will face these situations often as attorneys. But next time we do, we will be representatives of someone else. It may be a client or a firm, or even just Baylor as being Baylor attorneys. But how we conduct ourselves reverberates, and the ripples splash into the lives of others. So in the future, when we're faced with that impossible situation, it won't be our first rodeo as we strategize and war game it out. As we look to what's next, let us remember we are now in a position to shape the future more than an average person. Knowledge is power. So if I may, I'd like to share 2 small pieces of advice that were shared with me recently. The first, as embodied in Luke 12:48, because we have been given this opportunity and through blood, sweat, tears, and grace have succeeded, we're in turn called to do more. We're called to be more. And second, for us to lead that life of impact, we can't spend too much of our time thinking about what has already happened and what may happen. Life and the opportunities it gives us happen in the here and now and are fleeting. I am honored to walk the stage with each of you today. Congratulations and thank you.
Bain, thank you. We are honored to welcome you and all of your classmates into the ranks of Baylor lawyers. And as you all know, we always capitalize not only the B, but the L. So congratulations again. Thank you, Bain. I'd like to introduce our graduation speaker, Paul Yanowich. Professor Paul Yanowich was selected by the graduating class to deliver the address, and let me just say, he is a rock star. When he walked in this morning, the graduates broke into applause, and with good reason, because, well, he's an amazing individual and an amazing lawyer. Paul is a graduate of the University of Washington School of Law. After law school, he took never the easiest path, always seeking the jobs that were most competitive. First going to the University of Chicago as a Bigelow Fellow, and the University of Chicago prides itself on being able to select from the top candidates for fellowships, going on to be a clerk for a judge on the 8th Circuit, again, a highly competitive job, and then moving to the Department of Justice. As you might imagine, the Department of Justice has its pick among the best lawyers in the country to be part of that department. At the Department of Justice, Professor Yanowich's work entailed representing the United States in a number of different areas, a broad swath of areas. It's listed in your program, all the different things and different places within DOJ that Professor Yanowich worked, but you'll note that it ranges from investigating and prosecuting cybercrimes to investigating events related to the September 11th event and all sorts of things. Professor Yanowich's bio summarizes his career, but he left off one fact, namely how he came to be a member of our faculty. Professor Yanowich actually first taught for Baylor Law as a visiting professor in the mid-1990s. He took the place for a brief period of time of Professor Sayre when, and you all know Professor Sayre, when Professor Sayre took a leave to teach law in Lithuania. And in return, we got Professor Yanowich, and I think that was a pretty good thing for Baylor Law. The students in the 1990s then, as is the case now, recognized Professor Yanowich as someone who not only is really smart and has lots of practical experience and is an engaging instructor, but someone who is available as a resource to answer their questions about the law and to advise and counsel them as they proceed through law school. These students, as was the case back in the 1990s, selected Professor Yanowich to be their graduation speaker. So this is not his first time to be our graduating speaker. We're fortunate to have Professor Yanowich teaching primarily in the criminal law and criminal procedure area and giving our students the benefit of his years of practical experience. I call on Professor Yanowich to share his thoughts with the graduating class. Paul.
Boy, I feel old now. So. Dean Wilson, distinguished members, colleagues, friends on the faculty and staff, Dean Gordon, friends, family, most importantly, right, graduates of the Baylor Law School. I am here today deeply honored at being given the privilege and the opportunity to speak to you on this very august occasion. A celebration of your completion of what truly is one of the most rigorous courses of professional study in the United States today. For many of you, this is not your first considerable achievement in your life, but I can say, and I know my colleagues will join me, I can say with great confidence it will not be your last. So when I got this honor, I tried to figure what should I talk about. So I went to my wife, who is several times smarter than I am and many times more insightful than I am. Not just on life, but after 25 years of marriage, I've learned everything else, right? So I said, what should I talk about? And so she first suggested, she said, talk about issues of current or future importance on which you have expertise that is not widely shared. So I thought a little bit, went to my study, and I came out and I said, okay, I'm prepared to talk about enforcing cybercrime in a multipolar virtual reality, about the problems cryptocurrency poses, right, to an international banking system, let alone the existential threat of artificial intelligence, right? So by the time I got through that, I had to wake her up, right? And she said, anything else? And I said, well, in terms of expertise, I got a backup one if you didn't like that one. I can hold forth on the transcendental joy associated with meatloaf, right? And she said, no, that's not going to work. So I said, okay, what else you got? So she said, okay, why don't you talk about some issue or some cause about which you are passionate, right? To show the newly minted lawyers, your new colleagues, right, in a very tangible way, the essential truth, right, that pursuing your passions inexorably, immeasurably fulfills your life, right? So I went back to my study, and I came out moments later, and I went to her and I said, yeah, I tried that. It brought me right back to meatloaf. That ain't gonna work. So she gave up on me. So I went back and I thought, well, one thing I can do, kind of as a public service, is I can tell you all the mistakes I made, right? And I can save you the embarrassment and the humiliation I endured, right? So you don't have to do that. So I started making a list, and sadly, of course, I quickly realized we just don't have that time, okay? That's way over time. So I'm going to talk to you to follow up with what Bain said. I'm going to talk to you about the lessons that I'm able to tried to distill from my 35-odd years of practice, okay? And hopefully these lessons somewhat transcend the particular types of work I did, the particular courts I practiced in, right? And when I began this process, I thought, well, this is going to be hard because I got to come up with some deep truths, right? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that these eternal verities, these pearls of wisdom that you get from being in the trenches over time, most of them really aren't that deep. They're not perspective-altering, life-changing kinds of things, right? In fact, just among us, right? You probably have heard most of these from your parents. Now, I realize when your parents told you that, and when we lectured you, because of course, as a parent, we never communicate with you, we don't talk to you, we don't discuss things with you, we lecture, right, when we talk. And when that happened, you probably rolled your eyes and you thought, listen, we're generation, whatever you are, X, Y, Z, whatever it is, right? And you looked at your parents and you thought, you are generation ancient history. What could we possibly learn from you? But most of these things, in fact, are things that are not indecipherable puzzles. That only, we want to think that these pearls of wisdom are things that only come to us if we trek into the Tibetan mountains to some monastery and you sit on the floor and you meditate for days without eating, right? Until you become one with the universe. Or more likely, you disassociate, right? And you hallucinate there's a Chick-fil-A in the lobby, right? But they're not that unfathomable or indecipherable. Now, in all fairness, I hope you will find that you won't fully appreciate some of these if you choose, on the other hand, to spend your time sitting on the couch, drinking Red Bull, playing Call of Duty, and watching reruns of New Girl, all right? That's not going to help. But the first of these lessons is really, unfortunately, Mr. McNeil stole my thunder, right? He's so smart, he's so prescient, that before he's even entered the practice of law, he's figured it out, all right? And that is that probably the most difficult skill that you will be faced with, or that you will have to manage, the biggest challenge you will face in your life is time management and facing your practice. How to accomplish what you need to do well with all the other demands. We helped you, as Bain pointed out in some color, we helped you prepare for this, right? And you would be forgiven for believing while you were in law school that you have no extraneous time, that no time is unallotted. And there were times where that was true. And you would possibly be forgiven, you probably have had the thought at some point, right, that, boy, I can't wait till I get out and practice and I can do this right. Well, I'm here to tell you, never say that out loud, okay? Because that just shows you're completely unprepared for life, all right? Because the fact is, right, the fact is that most of you statistically will marry, wind up in relationships, have children, and there will be enormous pressures on you to devote the time necessary to be a good spousal partner. And there will be pressures on you to devote the time necessary for you to be a good parent. And there will be pressures on you to devote time to your friends, the people, as Ben and Mike pointed out, that you've gone through this incredibly arduous experience with. And there will be enormous pressures on you to devote time to your new friends, your neighbors, your community, to practice your faith in a spiritually fulfilling manner. And while you're doing all that, let's get ready for a month-long trial. And let's not forget me time, right? Time for us. Most of these demands you cannot delegate. These are not demands which are optional. And you give them short shrift or you ignore them at your considerable peril. But it is a skill you will have to work at your whole life. Second lesson, and I don't mean to be a downer, but the second lesson is you will fail, right? And I don't just mean you're going to lose a motion here, you're going to lose a trial there. What I mean is the probability is that at some point in your career, you are going to find yourself face down in the mud, an abject failure. And that is going to be very uncomfortable and very disorienting, because we are raised, right? We are tutored, we are taught how to succeed, but no one teaches us what to do when we fail, right? Nietzsche, the famous German philosopher, an all-around fun guy, existentialism in Übermensch, right? And a lot of fun at parties, surely. He once said, right, famously, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. But of course, that which does not kill you usually hurts like all hell. So, I urge you to try and avoid that, but to be prepared when it happens. And again, as Mr. McNeil pointed out, we tried to prepare you in great measure for this. We called on you in class, right? And we asked you questions which we, in many cases, knew you didn't have the answer to. And when you did have an answer, we tried to show you that that answer was inadequate, insufficient, not well thought out. The whole subtext of which is, well, you just wasted everyone's time. Thank you very much. Right? And then in your upper level practice-oriented classes, as your colleagues have pointed out, we asked you to stand up and try and demonstrate skills which you were unprepared for, which you've never been prepared for, in front of all your colleagues. And then, without anesthesia, we proceeded to critique you in minute detail to prove to you the ways in which you fell short of the standard which we were holding you to, the high standard of being a Baylor lawyer, right? So we did this for you. You don't have to thank us, just out of the goodness of our hearts. But the point is, the sun came up tomorrow, right? You went back to class the next day. Your colleagues and your friends didn't say, listen, if we're ever in public, don't stand next to me. I don't want to be seen anymore with you. Right? We survived, and you will. And when that happens, when you meet failure, keep these few things in mind. Number one, failure is inherent in the human condition. We are imperfect, fallen creatures. And everyone fails. They may not acknowledge it. They may not tell you about it. It may not be an open court for everyone to see. But everyone falls short significantly in some way in their life. And it's almost invariably true that when you do fall short, when you do fail, your failure will not be as abject and as horrible as you think it was, right? You think everybody sees your failures, they're broadcast in Times Square on, multi-jumbotrons, right? Well, chances are the failure was not as bad as all that. Now, the corollary to that is that when you think you crushed it and you're walking out of court and you're ready to tie on that big cape with a big S in the middle, right? And you think you're God's gift to mankind, chances are you probably weren't quite as good as you thought you were. And remember that the best attorneys were not those who avoided failure. They were simply those who learned the most from it. And the key is, failure may be disorienting, it may be uncomfortable, but it is not disabling. So don't let it be that. Third point, the third lesson is that at some point, in some way, your character is going to be tested in the practice, right? And it's likely to be tested repeatedly. And I'm not talking about situations in which it's rather clear there's an ethical line here, there's a legal prohibition here, and you're being asked to cross those lines. No, that's pretty clear. I'm talking about situations in which it's unclear, where you have options. And usually a situation where you have a substantial amount to gain or a substantial amount to lose. And what you choose to do at that time and in that context is going to say everything about you. Now remember, character is not something which is displayed, right, when we're sitting there on Saturday night, in Woodway in our nice house in Katy or South Lake, and we're sitting with our very nice friends in our very nice house, and we're drinking our Chardonnay and eating our Camembert, right? And someone says, what would you do if you found a bag of money that was from a bank robbery? And we all say, oh yes, we would immediately take that back to the bank. Please pass the Camembert, it's simply divine, right? That's not a test of your character. It's situations where you have something rather significant to lose or to gain. And it may be a situation where you may, if you stand up and do the right thing, what you've been taught to do, where you reveal your character, you may, God forbid, lose a client. You may incur the wrath of a judge. You may incur the wrath of your partners. But you will be tested. And you will have to decide who you are. And for most of us, this won't come in these big moments, right? They'll come in the smaller moments, the quieter moments. They'll come in situations where how we deal with other people, the court clerks, the judge's clerks, our clients, right? In ways in which we deal particularly with opposing counsel. These are people who are paid, right? Whose objective is to frustrate your objective. And how you deal with them, what you leave them with, says an inordinate amount about you. And sadly, very sadly, you will find that there are a lot of mean, spiteful, malicious, belligerent, and not to put too fine a point on it, stupid people out there, right? And how you deal with them is going to mean an awful lot. Remember what Churchill said. This is a completely apocryphal story, I'm sure, but it is ascribed to Winston Churchill. And it's not a very nice thing he said, but it very much is true. He supposedly was at a state dinner and sitting next to a very rich, very powerful socialite, Lady Astor of the Astor family. And supposedly at one point she leaned over and she said, "Mr. Churchill, you are drunk." And he responded, "Yes, Lady Astor, I am drunk. And you are ugly. And tomorrow morning, I'll be sober." Okay? So remember that. As belligerent and mean and obstructionist and intemperate and intolerant as people are that you will meet, they have to wake up with themselves tomorrow morning. And they're that, and you are not. My last lesson is more of an observation as much as a lesson. And that is, recognize, be aware that this degree is really something in today's society of a superpower. Now, I don't say that because I have any trouble distinguishing between the Marvel universe and the real universe, although it seems today many people have that trouble, and we talk about what's your superpower, right? Well, you've been given an extraordinary power, the ability, the demand to think critically. And you may say that's an over-exaggeration. Everybody thinks critically. But if you spend any time watching the way we as a society, we as citizens, fulfill that constitutional privilege, the obligation we have to act as sovereigns. This is a republic. We are the sovereigns. That in matters outside of work, when we talk about things that matter about who we are, our country is, what it's going to be like for our children and our children's children, there's a lot that doesn't count as critical thinking. And if you pay any attention, right, you see everyone talks in conclusions, and they mischaracterize, and they misstate, and they undervalue any arguments on the other side. And substantial parts of our population, most of us, right, when we leave work, we go home and we turn on the TV and we turn on that channel, which there are people who tell us precisely what we want to hear. confirming whatever bias we have. But when you go to work, right, you don't act that way. You don't go into court and say, Your Honor, I'm here to argue this motion. I'm going to give you the 3 reasons, most important reasons why I should win. And then, instead of dealing with the best arguments on the other side, I'm going to raise 3 rather stupid arguments and dismiss them. And I'm looking forward to you ruling in my favor, right? It's not going to happen, right? And why, when we're in work, do we use this? Do we demand this of ourselves, and then we walk outside and presumably let it go? This is really, unfortunately, a superpower. And frankly, it's that for which you are going to be handsomely paid. Because most other people in most other graduate programs and in college, they're not taught to think this way. And so when you get out there, you will realize almost everybody that interacts in the business world, in the real world, that transacts any sort of business, be it a company, be it governments, be it associations, be it lobbying organizations, be it whatever, they want lawyers. They don't just need lawyers. Yes, we live in a world that is highly regulated and over-criminalized, and so sometimes we need lawyers. But most, you will find, entities want lawyers because we bring that critical mode of thinking, which immeasurably adds to the success of that enterprise. And you have been trained in that. You are presumably experts, and you are continuing every day you practice to hone that skill. Bono, right, the Irish singer, activist, philanthropist, once said in a very similar setting, commencement setting, it's really not fair, right, because he's Irish, right? And if you say things with an Irish accent, it really doesn't matter what you say, right? It just comes out so felicitous, so delightful, so insightful that we just want to throw it on a poster somewhere. So it may not be that deep, but Bono said, in a situation like this, that you are being given a blunt instrument. Right? We have given you, and you are armed today with a tool. And it is up to you how you use that tool. And the thing is, in life, right, when you walk out of here, there are no more required classes. Life is one big elective, all right? And how you choose to use this tool will define you, and it's up to you. And it really is a matter in many ways, as you decide what path to pursue and how you do this. This is really about the constitutional value enshrined by our framers and our founders. Right? The idea of liberty. And it's not just, I'm not talking just about or really about the protection from unjustified or unreasonable seizure, right, or interference by government bodies. I'm talking about the value that lies at the base of liberty. The idea of autonomy, that you get to define you and who you are and who you will become. No one can tell you what to think. No one can tell you how to worship. No one can tell you what you must be, how you must use your skills, what function you need to perform in society. That is entirely up to you. And there's a lot of pressure, understandably, right, to do what our parents want us to do, or pursue the path our friends take, or what we think society wants us to do, or act the way we think society thinks we should act. But the point is, you get to choose your own path. So don't follow the path that's well-trodden just because somebody else is going there. Find your own path. Define yourself. And let me just finish by saying that there's another part of this superpower, which goes back to lesson number 3 and the fact that you will be tested. And that is the idea that not only did you learn how to think critically, but you learned, right? You were required to learn to as part of the skills you acquired, to stand up before others, some of who actively oppose you, and to articulate and persuade, to advocate for somebody in sometimes very hostile surroundings. That's a remarkable power. And as Mr. Brumber suggested, as Mr. McNeil suggested, as Dean Wilson suggested, how you use that will help define you. You can stand up. I hope you will find time, someplace, to stand up for someone who, for whatever reason, can't stand up for themselves. And there are spectacular failures where lawyers didn't exercise that and didn't stand up. So speaking of the Holocaust, right? You knew I was going to mention it, right? In 1933, there were about 1,800 Jewish lawyers in Berlin. And over a series of years, the Nazis instituted a series of laws that stripped Jewish lawyers of the ability to practice pretty much any aspect of law, essentially barring them from the profession. And that's what was so pernicious about the Nazi regime. It was an extrajudicial oppression. They used the organs of government. They used the law to oppress. And by 1938, there were no Jewish lawyers who practiced. And over the remaining years, many of them disappeared, went into camps and never came out. And during that entire time, nobody in the German bar stood up for those who could not stand up for themselves. Now, you may not be tested in quite so a dramatic fashion, but oppression didn't end with the Nazis. It didn't end when we as a country passed laws outlawing de jure discrimination on various times. As Dean Wilson pointed out, and as Mike told you, there are opportunities in this country. There is always injustice. There are those who cannot stand up for themselves. So use your superpower, this blunt instrument we've given you. Find some time, some place to stand up for somebody who can't stand up for themselves. I guarantee you it will be one of the most rewarding things you do in your life. So, please, don't forget us. As you go out there and succeed, please remember us. Let us share in your success. Behind your back, we'll take credit for it. That's okay. But we'd like to know about it. You will be missed. Remember, of course, that all law that you need to know derives from Proctor, right? God bless you all, and thank you. Take care.
Professor Yanowich, thank you for those words. Graduates, I hope when you get a chance, you might jot down some notes from what Professor Yanowich said and pull those out from time to time, because those are really valuable lessons that he has given you. It is now time for the presentation of the class, so I call on my colleague, Dean Corden, to do that.
The time has come for the conferral of the Juris Doctor degree. Will the candidates for the degree please rise? Dean Wilson, each of the candidates before you has completed the requirements for the degree of Juris Doctor as prescribed by the faculty of the School of Law and by Baylor University, acting through its authority of the Board of Regents. It is my pleasure to present the class to you for the conferral of the degree.
Thank you, Dean Corden. Each of you have completed the requirements for the degree of Juris Doctor, as set forth by the Baylor University School of Law. Upon the certification of the Faculty of Law, and on behalf of President Linda A. Livingstone and the Baylor University Board of Regents, it is my pleasure to confer upon you the degree of Juris Doctor. Candidates, if you will be seated for just a moment. We will now proceed to the awarding of the diplomas and the hooding of each of our graduates. This is probably my favorite part of the ceremony because, friends and family, while we recognize that we are in this beautiful setting and that it is certainly appropriate to have a degree of respect and decorum, we have a tradition at Baylor Law School. When the name of your graduate is called, you're encouraged to make as much noise as you can. And make no mistake about it, while we are warned about judging others, we are totally judging you based on the enthusiasm you show for your graduate. Indeed, we measure the depth of your love by the decibels you produce. So we encourage you, let your joy ring out. With that, let us begin.
Joshua Thomas Anspeck. Marissa Jean Baird. Jason Nicholas Beal. Our next graduate is a Leadership Fellow, Michael Arthur Brunger. Our next graduate is also a Leadership Fellow, Hope Elise Burkhalter. Denver Teague Burris. Jordan Downing Dobbs. Kyla Elizabeth Ellingson, magna cum laude. Jamie Renee Furness Jones, cum laude. Brendan Sullivan Gilbert. Grant Nelson Gosser. Mason Lee Harrison Grayson. Paige Elizabeth Heitkamp. Reagan Parker Hovey, cum laude. Bennett Bailey Johnson. Julia Keck. Gardner Bain McNeil, summa cum laude, highest ranking student in the graduating class. Joseph David Nelson. Samuel Halstead Pumphrey, summa cum laude. Connor Bradley Roberts. We want to recognize our next graduate who is not in attendance, Brooke Werlinger Scarpinato. Samantha Nicole Schaefer. Michaelina Circle. Sarah Whitney Starks. Andrew Robert Tisdale. Dana Aaron Watkin. McKenna Grace Williams. Ashley Yosemite Sarate.
What a class. Let's have another round of applause for this graduating class. Well, congratulations to you all. In just a moment, we will close the formal part of our celebration. Before we do, just a few last-minute notes. First of all, the celebration continues at the Law Center. Immediately following our adjournment, please join us at the Law Center because the Baylor Law Alumni Association is sponsoring a reception where you and your graduates can enjoy refreshments, take pictures, and they can show you where they've spent so much of their time the last few years, where they survived practice court, what their seat was, everything. They can relive it, and you can see it. Second, we will recess out. I ask that you remain seated while the stage party recesses out, followed by the graduates. In fact, I ask you to remain seated because we're going to do something that's going to seem a little odd, but we're going to recess out, go out that door back there, and then come right back around here. So we're going to recess, and then we're coming right back. We're going to take a group picture, so I ask if you will allow us time to take the group picture for our professional photographer to get us all lined up and take the group picture, and refrain from doing anything until our professional photographer has finished. We will stay in place for a brief period of time to let you get your own picture, but please let the professional go first, okay? All right. Finally, before we end, I'm sure you recognize that all of this happens so well because we have a lot of people who work to make sure that graduation is done well, that it is special to recognize these graduates. So I want to thank those people who've been involved with graduation. That includes Jerry Cunningham, Susie Daniel, Lauren Porter, Nick Texera, Rick Soul, Ricky Levesky, Sophia Moreno, Shahina Shakur, Stephen Bollock, Sam Smith, and particularly I just want to note that the reception has been put together wonderfully by Sam Smith. Thank you to Chris Womack, our pianist. We've talked a lot about service today, and as we end, I'd like to end with a quote from the 18th century Anglican cleric and theologian John Wesley, a reminder for us all. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you can. Graduates, you are ready to represent Baylor Law well. Congratulations.